Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Fear Free Passive Investing. My name is, of course, Lucas Miller, host of this show. And today I have a fantastic guest. His name is Mr. Chen. And Lou and I met at the Best Ever Real Estate Investing Conference in Keystone this year. And he was on a panel of other passive investors talking about what to look out for and a lot of the stuff we talk about on the show. But before we jump into the show, I just want to remind everyone that I put links to everything we talk about at fearfreepassive.com. So if you haven't checked out the website in a little while, make sure you go head over there and find the links to everything we talk about in today's show. So with that, let's welcome Mr. Lou Chen. Lou, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we met a couple weekends ago, actually, in Denver at the actually in Keystone in the mountains at the Best Ever conference, where you were presenting on a panel about passive investing. And I was sitting there in the audience listening to what you had to say and the other panelists, and I was just struck by the honesty and the professional demeanor that you guys were talking about passive investing. And I knew from that moment, like, this is exactly what we talk about on the podcast. So I had to have you on here. So I appreciate you making time and being here for this.
No, not a problem at all. I love talking about passive investing, and yeah, it was a great panel, and being on the panel was an honor, and I got to learn a lot as well.
Yeah, there was a lot of different advice there, which I thought was great. A lot of stuff we talk about on the podcast a lot, and it's just cool to hear that in a public setting like that too. But for those who don't know, tell us about a little bit about yourself and how you were first exposed to real estate and real estate investing.
Sure. Before I was a real estate investor, I was a computer programmer in the New York City area for about 14 years, and I started investing in real estate in about 2015,
Okay.
and then I discovered bigger pockets in 2017. So and I was hooked right away, and I did a lot of research and studying about different asset class in real estate, and finally I really liked multifamily syndication deals, and I thought it was a solid investment with consistent cash flow and being passive. And the most important thing was that I had my time to do other things.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems to be a common theme. You computer programmer, you don't have a whole lot of time left, so you figured you'd dabble in real estate and thank goodness for bigger pockets because I think that's led a lot of people to real estate investing that would never do that. So
Yeah, that's
um,
right.
yeah, I think that's really an interesting because you are the exact case study of someone that should be passively investing in commercial real estate. Like you have a decent income, you don't have a lot of time, um, but you want to do something. Is that fair to say?
Yes, it's very accurate. Yeah. On top of my job, I have three little kids, so they're very young, and people who works in New York City, they know that we have long commute. So
Mm,
on top of the typical 8 hours, and then we have long commutes, and then the kids that I need to take care of when I get home. Just I sometimes call it my second job. um, so yeah, I mean, I love to be active in real estate, but then if I look at the time that I needed to put in to learn and to be active to do it right, compared to the amount of time I put in syndication deal as a passive investors, uh, I really like that I get my time with being a passive investors. So yeah, it's very um, important that I get my time back.
yeah, that's a great point. So you have this long commute, this demanding job, and you just don't have a lot of time to actively invest. So how did you fall upon multifamily? There's lots of other things you could have done. Mobile home parks, you could have
Yeah.
invested with a friend that was flipping houses. How did you settle on multifamily?
Okay. So I first looked into, because I had a rental in 2015. We moved, and then we turned our primary resident into a rental.
Okay.
So I had the first-hand experience running a rental, single-family rental, and I saw the tax benefits. I saw the steady cash flow. I saw the passive side of it. So that's why I started it. So I thought I was going to do more single family, but then I realized time wasn't really on my side. I really didn't have the bandwidth to go full time on single family, and I thought look into multifamily where it has this, the economy of scale. So
Mm.
instead of doing one single family, you have hundreds of units. So if one goes vacant, the other one will pick up, and so it's a stable asset. So that's the one I know. So I
Yeah.
started with what I knew, and yeah, there are other asset classes like mobile home park and self storage, retail, commercial. I just didn't know any of them. I just didn't know. I just didn't have the knowledge for those asset classes. So I knew single family, and then that takes me to multifamily, and then combining with the passive side, that's where I landed in multifamily syndication deals.
Yeah, I think that's a a great idea. Is if you know, it could be attractive sometimes to delve into self storage or mobile home parks or RV parks or whatever it is, but
Yeah.
if you stick with what you know, that's what's comfortable, and that's a really good place to start. I feel the same way. I started in single family rentals and delved into multifamily, and that just because that was what I knew. It wasn't,
Yeah.
you know, I was certainly attracted to mobile home parks, especially the yield and self storage and all that. But you know, at the end of the day, it's this is what I know. So that seems very comfortable for a lot of people.
Yes, yes. That's what I've been telling other people too. Start with something that you know.
Hmm.
Don't try to chase the yield or the numbers or the best return possible. Go into something that you know just enough to understand the business. That you don't need to be an expert in multifamily and running the show, acquiring and property management, but you know the business well enough that you understand what their business plan is. So yeah, start with something that you know, and then that's a good place to start.
Good advice there. So you settled on multifamily, you figured it out. How did you decide um, who to invest with? Because I imagine there that was part of your decision. Is you know, you don't have to give names if you don't want to, but how did you decide the person that you were going to invest with was trustworthy and that they were a good fit for you?
Yeah, that was very scary at the beginning when I started this whole thing because I was basically putting my hard-earned money in somebody else's hands to hopefully that they would take care of my money. So it was not easy until now. It's still not easy when I try to find new sponsors to work with. But a good place to start was again going back to bigger pockets. So I went online and I listened to a lot of podcasts. So I put down the names that I like on the guests who talk about being a sponsor on multifamily syndication deals, and then I will reach out and then I will spoke to them on the phone. I Googled them a lot. So, I was doing a lot of homework on the sponsor itself. And after a while, you talk to their references and talk to people who have done this before. At some point, I felt like, this is someone who I felt that would do anything to take care of my money. So that's when I felt comfortable. Was it 100%? I don't think it was until now. I don't think it was ever 100%, but I felt comfortable enough that I could test it out with $50,000. And if it all goes to hell and I lose the $50,000, that I felt like I could sleep at night. And that's when I felt that it's trustworthy enough for me to put $50,000 in the sponsor's hand.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, 50,000, some people might be listening and think, wow, losing $50,000 would be life changing. And to those people, I might say this is probably not for you. You know, that
Exactly.
this is not a game that you want to play if you only have 50,000 to invest. And so it's good to hear you say that, you know, you test the waters, you do all the research you can, you try and get the right fit, but there's still you know, unknowns. And us as sponsors too have that problem too. You know, we can work as hard as we can to make sure this is the perfect deal, but things happen, and unfortunately, that is a possibility. And any sponsor that tells you that's not a possibility, you should probably avoid them. So,
Yeah, that's correct. That's
yeah,
correct. If they tell you that it's a guarantee return, then I don't think they're telling you the truth.
no, definitely not. So, how did you address those fears? You said it was a scary thing. Was it just education? Did you have to just suck it up at one point and just wire the money? How did you go through that process?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of investors like myself at early on was the fear of losing the capital, and my way of overcoming any kind of fear was the same with, like when we go to school, when we do other stuff, where you just try to learn. I mean, knowledge, it's a big deal that can ease the fear a little bit. I don't think it can totally eliminate it, but the more you know, the more you feel comfortable with the subject, the more you're comfortable with the sponsor. um, that's that's better. And at some point, you should be feeling comfortable enough to make a leap, and it's not a speculation that you vet the team, the sponsor, the structure. uh, Maybe you look into the location a little bit, their deals a little bit. You feel comfortable enough that this is someone that you can partner with, and just to test it out.
Yeah,
So yeah,
good
education,
point.
knowledge, I think is a big deal.
Yeah, that's really an interesting way to put it. I I was thinking about this the other day that do you remember back in like grade school or middle school when you were learning about the scientific method and you learned the difference between a guess and a hypothesis, and a guess was just pure speculation, like I guess that could be the reaction. A
Yep.
hypothesis was more scientific. It was, I believe this is going to occur because this fact led to this fact. Investing in syndications needs to be more like a hypothesis and less like a guess. Real estate investing in general, right? You don't want to speculate. There is that level of speculation. You don't know what the outcome is going to be, but you need to put in a little bit of effort, sometimes scientific effort, into making that hypothesis.
Yes, that was a good point. I never thought about it. And
Yeah.
going forward, I'm going to use that. Yeah, it's not a guess. A guess would be like a speculation, but hypothesis meaning you have enough facts or theory to support a possible outcome. Things could
Yeah.
go wrong. Your hypothesis could be wrong, but at least you have some evidence to back it up.
Well, and you can do a lot of things to see if it's a good fit before you wire the money. Like, in one of those is looking at the underwriting. So let's talk about what you look for in a sponsor's underwriting and what type of deal fits your criteria.
Okay. Um, I'm not an expert in underwriting because I'm all on the passive side. So I believe underwriting is the sponsor's job. All right.
Absolutely.
So what I invest in is it the sponsor, not the deal. So I invest in the sponsor who then invested my money into the deals. Um, so when I look at the deals that coming from a sponsor that I have a good relationship with, usually I would look into a few things. Whether this is aligned with my investment strategy at the moment. So I'll give you an example. When I had my computer programmer jobs, I have the steady W-2 income. So I was investing in deals where they were heavily back-ended, meaning that it's going to take lot of time, a lot of years to stable the assets. So no cash flow upfront. I was okay with that because I have my W-2 jobs. Now that I quit my jobs and enjoy my early retirement, I'm living off the cash flow. So the cash flow upfront is important now. Um, so my strategy has changed. So the sponsors that who even if I have previous relationship, they send me deals where it's again heavy back-ended, heavy lifting upfront. That would not fit my current investment strategy or goal now. So those are things that I would not be investing in with my cash account. I could invest with my IRA money or 401k money where I can't touch those money at this point. So I would put them in those buckets. So that's number one. Is it the deal, the projected returns and all that? Is it aligned with my investment goal at this moment? So then after that, and then I will look at their business plan, right? So if it's a non-sponsor dealing with a similar projects, the multifamily in a location they have operated in many years and they have proven track records of executing the same exact business plans. So I thought, that could be a indication that you have a good track record already. So I think it will work out nicely. So you already have the team in place, you have the business plan. The last thing I usually try to piggyback off, which is that I would look at the loan that they are getting. And um, if it's an agency loan like Freddie Mac, Freddie Mae, um,
Hmm.
my assumption is that companies as big as, almost like a government agency, they have access to all the data and economic data and all these numbers. They believe that giving this project a loan at this rate, for me, I think it's a confidence boost that saying a bank has looked into the deal and believe this is solid enough that they are willing to loan their money. So those are three things that I usually try to take a look, and that's how I make sure that I'm investing my money in the right deals.
Yeah, that's a good point. I say this a little bit, to other investors, other sponsors, active investors, but I never really thought about saying it to passive investors that the lender is the biggest investor in the deal. They take,
Yes.
anywhere from 65 to 80% of that chunk of money and invest it. So that's a really good way to show Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac their confidence in that market by saying how much money they're willing to lend. If they're going 80%, that's a great deal. If they're going 65, that might mean they're, and I mean, sorry, to 65% of the equity in the deal. If they're saying, that might be a market that we're not crazy about, but we're still going to lend on it. There might be a market that they won't lend at all on.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good way to look at the loan. I didn't think about that. So um, I want to go back to something that you touched on the panel actually, and you were talking about, there was this one panelist who was saying, oh, you got to look into every single detail of the underwriting, every single detail of the ppm. You have to read every line. You have to, take copious notes. And you're just saying, well, I don't read everything. I just invest in the sponsor because of that trust. I build up that trust. How do you build that trust with someone?
Yeah, that's right. It was a moment that many people came up to me afterwards saying, they feel validated not reading the PPMs. So my comment from that question was, what did I look at the PPM? My response was, I don't. I mean, the PPM is like for most cases 100 pages long, and
Mm-hmm.
it's all legal languages. I wouldn't understand it personally, but I do look into who put together the PPM, the sponsor, going back to the sponsor. Um, to build that trust, I think it's like dating, right? So you started slow, um, you find someone that you feel like you can partner with, and you give $50,000, you try one deal and see how it performs. And over time, and see whether they are making distribution as projected, or maybe below, or maybe over, how their communication is, are they forthcoming when they have problems? They tell you way ahead of time when they see this coming on the horizon, or they tell you way after the facts that when everything is blown up, hit the fan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so building that trustworthy relationship takes time, and it takes deals, and sometimes you started out strong after you did all the diligence, and then their communication has kind of fallen off, and their deals is not performing well. Um, so it's a process, and it takes time. And one advice I always tell people is, take your time. Don't jump in the deal. Take your time. Take your
Mm-hmm.
time to learn the sponsor. You are not gonna become a millionaire overnight in real estate. It's a long game.
Yeah, and uh, there's always another deal around the table. So if a sponsor is saying, "Oh, this is a 1 in a million deal," that
Yeah.
there's always another deal right around the corner. There's always, another. There's no reason not to take your time in this. And if part of that time is getting comfortable with a private placement memorandum or a PPM and wanting to read every word of that, by all means, go for it.
Yeah.
I tell and I encourage all my investors, please do read the entire PPM. I would say probably maybe 1 to 5% of them actually do that. Most people just say, you know, whatever happens, happens. It's kind of like reading the terms of service on your software, right? You just click
Exactly.
agree. I
Yeah.
don't encourage it because there are things that can be pretty egregious in some of them, but at the end of the day, if you trust the person that you're working with, that's really all that matters. So, how what's maybe 1 or 2 questions that a potential passive investor can ask a sponsor um, to know if they're being trustworthy or to know if they're someone they want to work with?
Yeah. Um, hmm. Usually, I would try to speak them on the speak to them on the phone. If I can meet them in person, that would be great. Going to conferences,
Mm-hmm.
and or having a meetup. You just go, or if it happen to be in your local area, just go and look them in the eyes. And I think that tells a lot, because communication is a lot more than just the words spoken. Um, 1 or 2 questions I would usually ask, first one is, I would ask them to tell me something about, something went wrong in a deal and what they learned and how they fixed it. Um, and and I believe every single deal, just like everything else, will go wrong, and that nothing's going to be perfect as projected all the time. So it's up to the sponsor to figure out a way to get it fixed. So if a sponsor tells you, "Oh, everything's perfect, we have not had bad deals," then it's a red flag that that sponsor is not being straightforward. So from their response, you can tell how trustworthy they are, what their strategy is, and what their communication skill and habits are. The second thing I would usually ask is a referral. Like, if you have people who have invested with you before, ask for 2 or 3 referrals of current investors. Do call them or email them, or make sure that you speak to them and ask about their experience. And I usually ask the referral, the current investors, that have they referred this sponsor to their family and friends. If they
Mm,
have not, um, then tells me something that they don't feel strong enough about the sponsor to refer to someone they care about, right? If they say, "Oh yeah, I refer to brother-in-law, sister, co-workers," that tells me a lot about their confidence in the sponsor to have pull other people into the investing group. So those are usually
really
2
good
things that I
question.
ask. Yeah.
That's really good. Um, I've had several people ask me for referrals, but never have I thought that they would be asking if they've referred them before. So that's a really good point. I like that a lot. Um, I want to just quickly touch on what we talked about earlier. Is that um, you know it is basically like dating your sponsor. I love that idea because, like you were saying, you go out, you kind of get to know each other, you have to see each other in person, because so much is communicated other than over the phone. Like, you can't see facial expressions, you can't see, I can't tell you how many people I've met over the phone or on the internet, and then they're a different person in person. So that's really important too.
That's right.
I
That's
love
right.
that.
Yeah. And at the conference that we were at, one of the speakers had a presentation about trusting your gut feeling. That says a lot. I was a computer guy, and to me, a lot of approaches are pretty scientific, with logics. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized the gut feeling is important as well.
Hmm.
So something doesn't seem right, that uh, then it might be not right. So trust
Absolutely.
the gut feeling. And sometimes for myself, I wouldn't be able to articulate why I had that feeling. But nowadays, like you said, there's always another deal. There's always another sponsor. So if it's not a very, very solid yes. To me, right now is a no. So
Yes.
trusting the gut feeling, it's very important too.
Yeah, yeah. Fear is not, and we've talked about this on the name of the show is fear-free passive investing. There's a reason I chose fear-free passive investing and not fearless passive investing, because fearlessness is a sense like fear is a bad thing. I don't think fear is a bad thing at all. It's a biological feeling that you get if something is wrong. It's evolutionary. You
Yep,
have that for some reason. And if you're not trusting that and if you're not believing in that gut, you're not going to be confident in that. And it's important for both sides. Obviously, for the passive investor, it's important to have confidence in the deal. But from a sponsor side, I don't want someone that feels that they don't belong in my investment, because they're the ones that's going to cause the most problems. They're going to ask the most questions. They aren't going to trust me, and I don't want that in my deal. So I'm a firm believer that if you have any reservations in your gut, just don't do it or learn more. If the fear is that you just don't know enough, that's understandable. That can be fixed. But if the fear is like, I don't know if I trust this guy, or I don't know if he's being completely honest with me, you might want to run from that one.
that's
Trust your gut.
correct.
I've
Yeah,
lost
trust your
I've
gut.
lost money on a couple deals. And back when I was flipping houses, and every single time I had a bad feeling going into it. Like it was one of those things where it's like, gosh, I just don't know about this, but I did it anyway and I lost money on them. So, I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah, yeah, trusting the gut feeling. That's very important.
Yeah. So I want to wrap up here with our final question. What advice would you give to someone who's interested in passively investing in real estate, but they're just fearful of taking that first step? They're scared.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the fear is real, and like you said just now, it should be there, because it is putting your hard-earned money into someone else's hands that you may not have even met, before. Um, my advice will be educate yourself, right? So if you educate yourself in the asset class that you want to invest in, multifamily, self-storage, mobile home park, whatever. So do your homework, understand the asset class, understand how it can make you money. And then, we've been talking about it all morning, is about do your diligence on the sponsor. Um, do as much as work you want, take as long as you want, and at the end, trust your gut feeling about the sponsor, right? So if it's not a hell yeah, it's a no. Um, and to me, the benchmark is that when you invest in your first deal, ask yourself, if you lose that $50,000, could you sleep at night? If your answer is yes, yes, you can sleep at night. That means you have done your homework, you are comfortable enough. Then you can make the deal. If you still can't sleep at night, that means you are not ready. Your fear is still keeping you up at night.
Mhm.
Um, then it's still time, and continue to do your homework. So my advice will be educate yourself, do your homework, do your due diligence, take your time.
Great, great advice. I love it. So, Lou, if people have any questions, or maybe they just want to learn a little bit more about you and your story, where can they reach out to you or find you?
Um, they can just send me an email. I do have a blog out there, but it's not being updated very often. You can definitely go there and contact me using the contact us form. But the best way to reach me is my email is Mr. Lu Chen. So it's mr.luechen@gmail.com. Anyone send me an email, I would love to help out.
Awesome. That will be in the show notes at fearfreepassive.com. Lou, I really appreciate you taking time this morning and sharing your story and helping to educate other people.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Yep.